has a very interesting background, having lived in many countries. She's studied social anthropology. She has worked in politics and now runs an NGO. And she's going to explain to us I think she will illuminate very clearly the role of civil society in human rights protection and promotion. So with no further ado, I'd like to leave it over to Jamie. Just one other thing. There will be a PowerPoint, and then there will be some time for questions. So we'd prefer if you hold the questions till the end of the PowerPoint. And also, the PowerPoint will be posted on the course website after the webinar. And we're seeing about posting a recording as well, but we're still grappling with the technical side of that. Okay, with no further ado, over to Jamie. And thank you so much for doing this, Jamie. We're so glad to have you.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. It always feels like I'm talking to myself, but I know there's people out there. Apparently, we're 8 of us. I'm going to put on my PowerPoint on the full screen. My name is Jamie Bolling, and I'm the director of the European Network. I'd like to thank Robin for inviting me to speak to you. I think this is exciting. I said I'm getting ready to go to Boston, even though I'm sitting here to the United States. I'm sitting here in Sweden. We're sharing my, let's see, I'm hoping, am I sharing my screen? I should be now.
Yes.
So you should now see my PowerPoint, where it says proud, strong, and visible. That's one of our slogans in the European Network. And I'll go on from there. Let's see, what is the next one? Come on. There, okay, sorry. There, webinar contents. I'm going to talk a little bit about who I am. I'm going to give you a glimpse of ENIL, talk about what is independent living, ENIL issues, our tools and results that we find through our spreading of independent living, and challenges and hopes. I usually start by saying I have 3 passports, 2 kids, and 1 passionate drive. I'm an American. I left the States when I was 19, back in 1974, so I'm getting old over here in Europe. I became a Swiss citizen and worked 16 years there. Moved to Sweden in 1991 and was lucky to fall off a horse in Sweden. Why do I usually say that? That's because it's a good country with good social legislation and social policy. So I had good rehabilitation, bringing me back to a normal life, an ordinary life, as we talk about an independent living. 2 kids, why do I talk about them? Here they were 6 and 9, just about the time of the accident. And they taught me very early how we all have a lot of prejudice. I remember the oldest one coming in, hands on her hips, saying, "Mom, get out of the bed and come home and take care of us." And I said, "Yeah, but you know, first I have to get into the wheelchair. I broke my back." "What? You can't sit in a wheelchair." That was the last thing she wanted, was her mother to sit in a wheelchair. And then there was lots of things. When we'd go shopping afterwards, they would say, "Oh, you can stay in the car." They tried to hide me away, and I said, "Wait a minute, guys, I'm coming too with this wheelchair. You have to get used to it." This was 1991. I got a passion and drive for what I do. That's because as a white American living in Paris, Switzerland, Denmark, different countries, I never except one time met prejudice. One time it was back in '74 when a French guy threw us out of his restaurant saying, "Les cochons américains," the pigs, American pigs, because the United States didn't let the Concord land in the country. But otherwise, I've been with an education, white, you don't meet prejudice. But then in a wheelchair, all of a sudden, I couldn't ride the bus, I couldn't ride the train, I couldn't go to different stores, different things. And then I became very active in what I do, which is working for independent living. I've been employed with ENIL since 2009, but I've worked in the movement since 1993, 2 years after my accident. But I found working, that was one thing as a job, but then, and I was active in NGOs, ENIL is an NGO, the NGO Steel that I was active for here, am active here in Sweden, Stockholm Independent Living. But then it wasn't enough, I found. Things weren't happening. So I got involved in politics, was active 10 years in the Green Party, thinking we gotta change policy, we gotta change ideas and attitudes. But I don't know, now I'm back to just working for NGOs. So, ENIL, what is it? It's a European-wide network of disabled people. It's a forum for independent living, which I'll talk about in a little bit. It's a cross-disability organization. We don't ask people why, if they're blind or they're deaf or they're sitting in wheelchairs. I mean, you usually can see a disability somebody has. But we don't talk about, yeah, I sit in a wheelchair because I fell off a horse, I broke my back. But we look at human rights, not diagnosis. Human rights, and that people need to have the services they require depending on their unique situation in order to live an active life. ENIL started in 1989. 80 persons from 20 countries came to Strasbourg. These people were coming for a conference on personal assistance. This was a very new concept at the time, personal assistance. And then when they were there was a lot of the leaders of the movement. When they were together, they decided to start ENIL, the European Network for Independent Living, in order to promote the issues, at the time, an informal network. But as time progressed, and ENIL had lots of ideas, lots of people wanted funding to do projects, we became a formal organization. We just moved to Brussels this year. We've been located in Ireland, in Valencia, back to Ireland, and now in Brussels since last year. Every other year we have what we call the the Freedom Drive. The Freedom Drive is an event. It took place in Strasbourg 6 times, and last year in September it took place in Brussels, where we come together every other year. As many people who want to come, people come paying their own ways or finding funding somehow. And this year there was 500 of us in the streets, marching from one park to the parliament and shouting and telling that we want access to independent living. We were able to get on Euronews, so we thought it was a pretty big deal. And when we're there at the European Parliament, the Swedes will meet the Swedish members of Parliament, the Germans will meet the Germans, the French will meet the French, and we tell the different members of Parliament about the situations in our countries and what the situation is at the European level as well when it comes to independent living. We lobby at the EU level, as I said, with the members of Parliament, also through conferences and different things, and we try to work also at the national level through our different leaders. We have a board which consists of 9 persons, and they're from 8 different countries. We have staff. We have someone with us tonight, Liliana. You can't hear her. You guys can only hear me. But Liliana is sitting in Sofia. We have our staff face-to-face next week. Will come from London, from Sweden, from Bulgaria. Will come from Ghent and also Brussels. We have an active European youth the ENIL youth, sorry, and we have a project, ECCL, where we promote deinstitutionalization. Our slogan is free our people now. We believe no one should live in an institution. People should be able to live in homes. So after 25 years, there's members in over 45 countries. We have an active Facebook. We have members from Finland, Cyprus, from Georgia to Iceland, both EU countries, but also Council of European countries. And we have the Freedom Drive every other year, our General Assembly every other year. Okay. Independent living, what I've been talking about, what does it mean? Adolf Ratzka, you can see a picture there. He's one of our gurus here in Europe. He went to the States back in the 70s, because at the time universities in Europe weren't accessible. And he went to a school in California and met American disabled people who were promoting independent living. That's how he found out about it and brought the idea back with him. So did John Evans from England, so did Kapka Panatove from Bulgaria. She was studying in the States, found out about independent living, came back and started promoting independent living in Bulgaria. So it's just to be ordinary people, to have the same range of options, the same degree of self-determination taken by our non-disabled friends, colleagues, etc. It means also having choice, control, being able to participate and inclusion, being included in the society with full participation, but control over the services that we get and being able to choose the services that we get if we need services. We're based on the social model. We would even say the human rights model. Before And it's still today, there's a lot of people that look at disability as a problem of the disabled person, that it's a medical way of considering it, rather than looking at disability at how is society accessible so that I can be active in society, that I can access full citizenship, participation, equal opportunities. So our issues are ratification of the UNCRPD. There's now only 2 countries left here in Europe that haven't ratified. That's Finland and Ireland. Independent living is a human right. If you look at the convention, Article 19 is the one that talks about living independently. We say it's giving independent living, emphasizing that it is a human right. I talked about Free Our People Now, the right to community-based services, freedom of movement. The European Union is supposed to be a union where people are free to move to work from one country to the next. But I can apply for a job in Brussels, but I wouldn't be able to get it. I wouldn't be able to take my personal assistance. I'm a wheelchair user. You don't see the wheelchair maybe. Now, take my personal assistance with me to be able to work in Brussels. Being able to participate in all decisions, a resolution against cuts. There's cuts in a lot of the European countries now. We also say no EU tax money should be put into institutions. So our tools, I talked about the UNCRPD, Article 19, but also other European legislation and policy promoting social inclusion. Lobby actions, I talked about ENIL Freedom Drive. Tomorrow's May 5th. It'll be the 3rd year that we celebrate the European Independent Living Day. And we'll have, we think, at least 28 countries that will be doing something in their country to celebrate independent living, doing a demonstration, talking about the problems that are having at home, whether it's cuts in personal assistance or inaccessibility, lack of transport, whatever it may be. Here's a picture from one of the freedom drives. I think it was 211. Institutions is the worst solution. You can read that on the placard on the one girl's holding. This is a group from Slovenia. They were gathered there. A lot of them lived in institutions as kids. I had my accident at the age of 36, so that wasn't something for me, but I have a lot of friends who lived in schools where they were institutions when they were young, where they weren't able to go home, weren't able to go to the school in their neighborhood. And that's for us what independent living is. You should be able to go to your school next door with your friends next door. So Article 19, that all persons with disabilities should be able to live in the community with equal rights, to be able to choose the residence. So they shouldn't be set in an institution. They shouldn't be obliged to live somewhere. They should be able to choose where they want to live. They should be able to have access to community support services, including personal assistance when it's necessary, and community service on an equal basis to other persons. So this is one of our main tools that we have here. I've heard that you've been reading the different legislations or different directives. So ENIL activities, grassroots to government. The Freedom Drive I talked about, we're partners in research. We've done research. InnerServe was a program on social innovation. DISIT was looking at legislation in the different countries. Is it allowing for full participation? We are considered to have expert knowledge, so we do a lot of representation. We do a lot of conferences with, for example, the Fundamental Rights Agency here in Europe, or the European Disability Forum, or OSCE, this Zero Project, etc. We have a lot of country conferences. I'm planning a study visit where there'll be 20-25 people from Bulgaria, Spain, anyway, a few other countries coming to Stockholm in September to be able to see how Sweden actually did close their institutions. And then the deadline was the 1st of January. Everybody had to be moved out of the institution. How did they do it? 85% of the people were against it in the beginning, but when the decision was actually made, only 15% were against. In the beginning, parents were against, people working in the institutions, people living in the institutions, but they knew that there was a lot of violence in the institutions, that people have a better life outside. Next one. I'm trying to keep track of time here too, so 40, 45. Okay, so through cooperation, we have, what happens? We have membership, as I said, in over 40 countries, and in the countries, our members will start centers of independent living, what we call CIL. For example, we just had a group of Greek young people who joined us and started an independent living organization center called iLiving. And they're also promoting independent living, access to personal assistance, so that they can have equal opportunities. One guy, he is 27, 28. He's working as a psychologist in a hospital. 50% of his salary goes directly to his assistant to be able to work as a doctor. We are having success of our demands, at least we think so, in that independent living is quite high on the agenda. I'm trying to move this thing so I can see my slide, sorry. And that there is more and more countries actually adopting legislations making personal assistance for a civil right, for example. So through CILs, we work at the local, regional, national level. Here's one of the pictures with the Swedes who met the MEPs at the parliament last year in not Strasbourg, Belgium, sorry. We work through round tables at the parliament if it's different issues. We will have one either this fall or the beginning of next spring on hate crime. We had one on different things, sorry. Marches to the parliament when we were there, but also in the different countries. Uloba, our member in Norway, has a march every June where they march to their parliament in Norway. There's about 1,000 people that come onto the streets, making people realize that we don't want to be hidden away, which unfortunately is the case. When I travel a lot, I'll see the countries where disabled people have access to services or to different support that they need, because they'll be out in the streets. People visit Sweden and say, oh, you have so many disabled people. I say, no, we don't. We don't have any more than you guys. But our people have services, so they're out in the street. They're going to the stores. They're living their normal lives. This was a picture when we were handing over our demands, 2011, to the president of the European Parliament at the time, Busek. These were just an example of the demands that we have. I got to move this thing again, this little thing that's keeping you guys here. Independent living, essential and disability policies, the right to freedom of movement. We call for an earmarking of 5% of EU development funding to go to, I can't read, oh, sorry, to go to the development of independent living programs in developing countries, ratification of the convention. You get an idea here. So we do a lot of trainings on independent living. What is personal assistance? How can we, as an expert, somebody that has a disability, how can we administrate our own personal assistance? How can laws be changed to allow this? What kind of economy is there in it, or how much will it cost? On peer support, which is very important for us, it's actually something that comes from Alcohol Anonymous, where I'll talk with people that are also wheelchair users. Well, we'll share our life stories, and through that we become stronger and more empowered, the empowerment of our members. Peer counseling, deinstitutionalization. There's supposed to be a training at the commission next week on deinstitutionalization. Community-based services, effects of cuts. So we lobby, as I said, with the Freedom Drive. The next one will be in Brussels again next year. The May 5th is a big event that we use, as I said. We lobby for the full implementation of the UNCRPD. I was just in Geneva last week, I guess it was, or the week before, where 19th, whatever that was, the 19th of April, there was a big conference with the UNCRPD was adopted 10 years ago, so we're celebrating 10 years. And they're going to write a general comment on Article 19. So they invited several of us, but not only, we were about 130, 40, 50 people there, talking about independent living and how we think that it could be accessed in the different countries. And they started a program now that's called UNCRPD Now, because there's so many countries, I can't think, it was 160 some, that have ratified the UNCRPD. I think it's the convention that has the most ratification, but they want full full ratification of the convention. So deinstitutionalization, one of the results that we actually did realize was doing some of our reports showing that EU structural funds have been used to build and renovate institutions and keeping our people in these institutions, where the money shouldn't be used to rebuild and to build institutions. It should be used for community living. Otherwise, you're segregating people in these institutions. We were able to get that message across where they put this in the regulation that the money is not to be used for that. So hopefully now there'll be a control and monitoring. So if it's used, the country would have to pay it back. Campaigns, proposals on a European resolution against the cuts. As I said, there's a lot of cuts happening in different countries. And we get our message again across that the cuts have more effects on disabled people than on the rest of the population. So we wrote a resolution against this. Unfortunately, time ran out. We actually got the 40 members of parliament to sign it, and it would have been able to come to the floor of the parliament, but then they had the new election, so we had to start all over again. So that was a bit, unfortunately, our time ran short. The European Independent Living Day, personal assistance. Results. Independent living is high on today's European agenda, international agenda. The adoption of independent living legislation in various countries. For example, last year, Norway has now a legislation for personal assistance, making it a civil right. Before that, it was only Sweden that has it. So now there's two where it is actually a civil right, not just in the social legislation. Excuse me. I can't tell you right now, but there's more and more countries adopting legislation for personal assistance, for example. Also, there's more discrimination legislation, which is including inaccessibility as a discrimination, because when things are inaccessible, we don't get there. I can't still ride the bus that goes past my house out here in the country in the middle of Sweden, which makes me a bit angry. Anyway, time, 18:53. Okay, I'm doing okay. So changes in the regulations, I talked about that, and also that there's more and more people joining us, and there's more and more centers of independent living starting around Europe. So the CRPD, we talk a lot about Article 19, as it says living independently. We say it's independent living and access to services, which allows us to choose where we want to live, how we want to live our life, and who is going to work for us and how they're going to work for us. But Article 9 is very important on accessibility, Article 12 on legal capacity, Article 14 on liberty and security, the freedom of movement, Article 20, where we put the perspective of being able to take the portability of services, otherwise we just can't have this freedom of movement. Article 24, inclusive education, all children should go to a public school. Article 27, we should all access employment. But often when there's crisis or whatever, the disabled people will be the first one that's let go. So today's reality, we're still building institutions, unfortunately. I just heard of one in June. I was in Romania to speak with the Romanian Parliament on a conference there on deinstitutionalization, where the social what we call minister was there, and she promised that the institutions in Romania, where there's a lot, should be closed by 2020. And there was just a church, I'm not sure if it was the Orthodox church, I think it would be, who had just built this, or not built, but there was a great big, beautiful old building that they renovated, and there were going to live elderly people and young children, which I think is terrible. Kids shouldn't be living with the elderly, they should be living in homes. So there's a lack of community services in a lot of countries, a lack of accessible housing. I have a lot of friends who, if they're wheelchair users, can live 4 and 5 flights up in Estonia and can't get out of their house except maybe every 4 or 5 times a year because there's no steps. People can't carry them. There's steps, there's no elevator, sorry. Lack of personal assistance, lack of involvement of disabled people. A lot of disabled people aren't empowered, don't make their voice heard. Which we try to work with a lot. And attitudes that disabled people are seen as a burden rather than seeing the potential of the disabled people. This was a picture I took when I was in Bulgaria. We visited, behind us here is an institution, Stara Zagora. There's 200 people living there that have mobility impairment. I have a lot of friends that are wheelchair users, blind, and with or without arms, whatever. But I wouldn't want to live with all these people. I like to live in my house, which is integrated in society. But this group of people are living there, so we went to talk and to have a training on empowerment. A lot of these people have lived there 10, 20, 30 years. And when they were placed there, there wasn't a convention. So our message was that now there's a UNCRPD. You can use this UNCRPD as your tool to be able to claim your right to be able to leave this place. But I told them, you should, at your 200 of you, if you're all asked to leave and live in this one town, that might be difficult. But if you have to go back to where you came from, the city should take the responsibility rather than sending you away and putting you far away in the country, somewhere else in the country. The guy that's standing there, he bicycled up. It's on a hill, this place. Usually they're on a hill outside of society. And when he came, he said something, everybody started laughing. And I said, wait, I don't understand Bulgarian. The lady in pink, she's one of our board members. Her name is Kepka. I said, Kepka, what do you say? Why are you laughing? Well, he said, this place should be bombed. I said, why does he come here saying this place should be bombed? He just bicycled up. But then I looked closely, and she said, he's living here. And I said, what do you mean he's living here? And then you see that he's hiding the one hand under. He's missing a hand. So when this young guy, who's a strong guy, was a baby, then the parents decided it would be better for him to live in an institution. Also, the parents don't get the benefits that some families need to be able to keep their disabled children. So a lot of these people grew up in institutions, in this institution, and are quite unhappy living there, trying to get out. So that's one of the ways we try to work as well. So what kind of changes are there? What kind of changes do we need? There are changes for more human rights-based disability policy, but there still needs to be more. There are societies allowing for decision-making as to who, where, and how to live. In Sweden, for example, well, there's starting to be smaller institutions. The smaller institutions are growing a little bit bigger. But you usually would have the choice to live at home or to choose to live in a group living home. Services with user control. We see more, needs to be more. Services where there's choice, where you can choose. Full participation, being able to, for example, be politically active. I was active 10 years, but in the end, I didn't really have the money to stay active because who pays for the personal assistant when I'm there? The Green Party didn't want to do it here, and I ended up going back and I said, hey, I can't do this anymore. So I choose just to work these days, and I'll maybe take that fight again one other day, but not just now. Access and accessibility, we're seeing more and more, as I say, accessibility. I was in Paris just recently and found that it's quite accessible, though I was afraid to go there after 25 years. That's why I actually came from the States back in '74, was to Paris to learn French. But there is more. I was able to take the buses in Paris, just like you are in the States. The United States is quite strong, in the bigger cities anyway, when it comes to accessibility. But smaller cities can be a different story. When I go home to visit my sister in Michigan, out in a smaller town, maybe there the accessibility isn't as good as it could be. Personal assistance, I think, we're stronger here in Europe. Resources are redirected from institutional care to independent living services. This is what is needed, and we're hoping and seeing a little bit of starting it to actually be that way, that they are redirecting resources. So challenges and hopes. Some of our challenge. There's a financial crisis a few years back, and of course they're going to use that, saying we have to cut. Another crisis we're living right now is that Sweden took, for example, in 160,000 immigrants last year. The migration flow, 160,000 people came here. So our social minister went out and said, well, we're going to have to reduce personal assistance so that we can afford to have all these migrants. Of course, we think, hey, don't take away our funding by giving it to somebody else. So there's always where's the tax money going to go? Lack of empowerment. Again, as I said earlier, that disabled people need to be empowered. Um, if you're living a very sheltered life, you may not have been, and with low expectations, I find a lot of times there's very low expectation, then you're not as strong as you could be as a person. Need of personal assistance and support, research with independent living involvement. There's a lot of research being done on disabled people, but we want research to be done with us because we can see things in a different way. We have a different pair of glasses, and I think we can add to make the research much better. If, for example, a lot of social services were created and together with disabled people, I think we would be happy. I think the services would be more appreciated, they would be more effective, and probably more cost effective as well. We are growing, as I said. There is stronger organizations, which means there's better empowerment, representation of disabled people in all sectors. It is, at least there's an awareness that it's supposed to be. I can't think which article it is in the convention right now, 30 something, where the disability DPOs are supposed to be involved in decision making. So next Freedom Drive 2017. If you happen to be in Brussels, join us. That would be great. This is a picture back a few years long. As you say, now I have short hair, then I had long hair. This was actually one of our youngest members. She was 15 years old, if I'm not mistaken, at the time. And she found that the Freedom Drive was fantastic. I haven't followed it this past year, but I know she went home very inspired and became a great activist for the independent living movement. I talk fast. That's the end of my slides. Thank you very much. We can open for questions. Maybe you want to say something, Robin?
Jamie, I just want to thank you for covering so much territory in such a short time. And I do want to open it to questions. It was really interesting. I just wanted to point out, to clarify one thing, the full name of the Convention on the Rights of People with Disabilities. And also, you mentioned the general comment on Article 19. Just to remind the students that the general comments, what that actually is, that's when the treaty body decides how the article in question will be interpreted. And I'm saying that to help the students out a bit. And yeah, I think it's great that you illustrated the utility of UN human rights conventions, because we've had very interesting and heated discussions in the class about, there's so many human rights violations going on in the world, and yet we have so many conventions. What is the real impact of these conventions? So I hope we'll have questions about that as well. Okay, I don't want to talk too much. Let's open it up to the students.
Let's see. Are there other groups? Let me see if I can find Josh and give you the mic. Unmute Joshua. Joshua, you can speak. I can hear you. Okay. What do you mean by other groups? I'm not sure. You're at work. Okay, I understand. I'm not sure what you mean by other groups. There's a lot of disability organizations. I mean, we're 6 or 7 disability organizations that are we get our funding, a main part of our funding from the European Union, from the European Commission. And the European Commission actually funds Autism International, Inclusion International, EDF, the European Disability Forum, ENIL. So ENIL is one of these six or seven. I'm not sure exactly how many. I've lost count now, that are actually getting funding to do. So we work out a project proposal. We have now a 3-year project. It's called an operational grant, where we have 3 years cooperation with the Commission last year, this year, and next year, where they're funding our work program. And the other organizations would have the same. And in that, we need to show that we're working for the implementation of the convention, but also the 2020, the European 2020, and different other tools that they want us to emphasize and raise awareness on. Does that answer your question? Seeking what you were seeking. I think that would answer it then, maybe. Spinal bifida is one that's quite strong, and Autism Europe is quite strong as well. This is at the EU level. Then in the different countries, in some countries, independent living is much stronger. For example, in Sweden, in Norway and Sweden, the centers of independent living have mainly become actually service providers, where where the organizations are cooperatives and they provide personal assistance. In Norway, the ULOBA, which is the Center of Independent Living, they have members from the south to the north, and I think they have over 1,000 users that have personal assistance. In Sweden, the independent living organizations would only be about, maybe 1,000 as well, where you have a lot of other DPOs working and a lot of other organizations which are providing personal assistance. As you have in Sweden, for example, legislation where you can, if you need assistance, you apply for it, and if you get it granted, then you can choose to have it either through the municipality, or you can start your own company. You can join a cooperative, which is what I did. I joined the Cooperative of Independent Living, or you can find another public company that's providing the service. And then through the independent living organizations that provide assistance, at the same time, we have a high level awareness of the need to keep the assistance and the need to also lobby for equal rights. So we will work both ways. We'll have the awareness raising part of the organization, or the lobby part, as well as the service provider. Any other questions? I hope so. Let's see. Otherwise, it'll be a short.
Jamie?
Yeah?
Can you hear me? I actually thought, were there other questions from the students?
I don't see any right now. I only see Joshua.
Unfortunately, I don't hear the students when they ask the question, so I only hear the answer, which is such a shame.
I can unmute, since there's not many of us, I can unmute everybody, and then people can, if they want to. We'll see how it works. I'm not sure. So now I need to.
Can you hear me? This is Josh.
Hi, Josh.
Oh, great.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you hear us?
Hey, mine's working. Yes. Hey, doing, sir? You come on in. You know where you're headed today?
Okay, then we have Samantha, Florence, Jessica.
Yeah, but well, there is divorces that take place here. However, we don't have anyone here.
I don't know if is that a question from Josh, or?
Well, I don't think there's anyone here. You're welcome to hang out and see if anyone shows up.
I think we need to ask him to mute his microphone.
Yeah, yes, sir.
I just muted him.
Okay.
Any other ladies say any questions? Okay. Thank you for my. Yeah?
I just had one question. You were talking about a good example of a Norwegian law that was passed saying that personal assistance is a civil right. And I was just wondering, can you explain just a tiny bit more about how that process happened? Because the focus of this week, as you know, and I think you've given many good examples of how civil society organizations can actually have a really concrete impact. Could you elaborate on that example or another one, just so a little bit more in depth? You can choose another example as well, but I wanted to give the students another example on that in a bit more detail, maybe, because I think it's important really to see the impact.
Okay. What it would mean, for example, in Sweden, which was the first country where personal assistance became a civil right, what it meant that is if you, for example, applied for assistance, well, when I've applied for assistance, and if I wouldn't have gotten, when I did recently, with the cuts, they took away part of my personal assistance. And I was against that because they gave me so little I wouldn't have been able to continue to work full time. So then I had to go to the court, and which you can do since it's a right, and you can appeal at the court. And I was able to go and say, hey, Sweden has ratified the UNCRPD, and you should be implementing it. Taking away my assistance is not allowing me to continue to do my full-time job, which is going against the convention. So I was able to use that and actually won in the court to get assistance back. This legislation in Sweden has been there since 1994. So Norwegian, which is of course our neighbor and also has the same sort of social policies in the country, at the time it was just a legislation, a social legislation where you could access, you would get yes or no. But last year it became a right for those who are in need, where now you can also appeal if you're not happy and take it to the court. Unfortunately, yeah, and I mean, okay, we're seeing a little bit the same thing that happened in the United States with the ADA, as far as I understood, that you had a very strong legislation in the beginning, cases went to court, and then it gets watered down so that you needed a new legislation. That's a little bit what's happening in Sweden, where the legislation dates now since 1994, so 22 years, I guess that would be. And with the different case, you're having some of the cases which are going against us, where they're making the interpretation much more narrow, and then that makes access more difficult. Does that answer your question?
Yes, that was an excellent example of the concept of a civil right and so on. But I was also just looking for more. I mean, you did mention this, but more detail on some of the examples where the lobbying and advocacy work of ENIL has resulted in concrete legislative change.
Okay.
Because I think that's very interesting.
For example, I'm not sure where the policy is just yet, but I know that I can take two cases where one is in Slovenia, where they also wanted legislation for personal assistance. And when you start to lobby for the legislation, there's different problems that can come up. For example, which group should be covered within the legislation? So I know that they are lobbying for this, and they're lobbying that people with intellectual disabilities should be included, because we feel that everybody should be included and not excluded. A lot of countries will exclude people with intellectual disability, thinking they can't live on their own. But in Sweden, for example, which the Slovenians were using, the case of Sweden showing where disabled people with intellectual disability who need 24 hours a day, maybe even 36 hours a day, can, with personal assistance, live in their own flat. And so they were here for a study visit in May. I'm not sure. I haven't had the chance to call them up and actually find out where they are. I know they had a project, and I know they have their own proposal where the movement will so often write their own proposal for the legislation, just like I know ADA was written by lawyers with disability themselves as well, and then they'll present it. If it's been accepted or yet, I don't know. When it comes to Iceland, the same thing. They also wanted access to personal assistance. They brought over some of the experts. Italy did the same. They brought over experts back in 1997 from the different countries talking about what personal assistance actually is. Different examples of Norway or Sweden. The UK, for example, has had a very strong independent living fund. Now there's some changes in the UK, so we'll have to see how that actually materializes. So they can use that to lobby for their own legislation, and there is now a legislation on personal assistance in Italy as well. But you'll gain steps, and then you'll get a backlash. For example, I was just contacted by the Italians saying that now there's a new legislation where they haven't taken the UNCRPD, or they've done an interpretation where they're allowing for institutionalization, where we say with the UNCRPD there should be no institution. So again, you find how are countries interpreting the actual convention.
And that's actually very interesting, because that's where the general comment of the committee on Article 19 can be very useful, because it provides a further basis for determining whether the way a country is interpreting the convention is correct or not. So general comments are important that way.
Exactly. Yesterday we actually had a meeting with the committee secretariat in Geneva via Skype. And this is the way we work, via Skype. And they were talking about, because we're going to do a research paper, we were talking about the different areas that where we see that it's problematic, where there's differences of opinion within the committee itself. And one of the main things, for example, is that you do have the different countries with their different standards of living and their different ways of looking at family representation. So the southern countries, for example, South American countries, some of the African countries are saying that independent living is only a Western concept. It's nothing that could work here. So where we say, no matter where I live, if I live in Africa and I'm dependent on somebody, I'm going to need support. Being dependent on your family and having to wait. Maybe you have a great family, but maybe you don't. Or like myself, I was in Sweden, I fell off a horse. My family's far away in the United States. Who is going to take care of me? But you don't want to be taken. You want access to the service so that I'm a taxpayer. I can work. Because of my personal assistance, I can work. I can pay my taxes. I can live an active life. If I was without your family, you can't. So there's different ways. They were looking at that. Countries interpret or have different legislations when it comes to legal capacity and taking away the capacity of disabled people. I mean, you don't have to go far back. Even in Sweden, where people with, I think it was, what's it called? Epileptic fits didn't have the same, couldn't marry or different things like that. I can't remember now, I've forgotten. You have different legislations, old legislations still saying disabled people should marry or they can't go to school, the same school, etc. So these are the ways that the convention that there should be. The neighborhood school should be accessible. The kids should be able to come there and then get access to the education they need in their school, but not be sent away someplace.
Yeah, so a lot of what you're talking about is about social inclusion as well. And I think there's a red thread in everything you said, which is that the CRPD provides kind of, it does set a standard and it does create a standard which can be discussed and explored and so on, but without that kind of document, you don't have any reference point for making demands. So in a way, this proves the importance of having these human rights conventions, no matter how dire the situation can seem sometimes when we compare, the various conventions to the situation in the world. But this does not mean that conventions as such are without utility, because you've just given numerous examples of how useful it's an advocacy tool, among other things, the CRPD.
For example,
I mean, I don't know if you agree with that, but that would be something I think is very clear from your speech.
No, I agree with that. And we're finding that, for example, you can also use the different directives that are adopted at the European Union level. For example, the bus directive. Though there's still exceptions to that, why they could buy an inaccessible bus that passes my house just last year, where we have legislation in Sweden that say the buses should be accessible. But there's a new directive with the Accessibility Act, where we're hoping that accessibility will improve within Europe due to the European Union adopting the act.
Yeah. I wonder if any of the students, I mean, we're nearing the conclusion. I'm just wondering if any of the students are still, interested in asking a question. We'll give people a bit of time.
The sun's coming behind me.
It's beautiful.
Today was a fantastic day up here. We actually had, I think, about 21 degrees.
Wow.
Able to sit outside. So we went from winter to summer, no spring.
So are there, okay, I don't know. Jamie, what do you think? I mean, if there are no more questions, do you?
No more questions. We had everybody on. What I can do, I mean, if anybody has any question, you can always send an email. You can see it here on the back. At the end of this, jamie.bolling@enil.eu. Follow our website tomorrow, www.enil.eu, where there'll be a lot of, since it's a holiday in a lot of countries, one of the things we're doing is the campaign on what is independent living to you. And independent living is full participation in society. It's being able to have access to services to be able to live an active life. I put down that it's through personal assistance I can wander the world. But different people putting up different things already today and tomorrow. So it'll be interesting to see, and there'll be a report on what is happening. For example, we have something called the Mythbusters. If you go into our website, you can find the Mythbusters. We have different material, which is quite interesting, but that one talks about the different myths people have on disabled people. So some people, France is translating that into French, the Italians translate it into Italian. So that they'll launch that tomorrow for the May 5th day. We had another organization contacting us today saying that they were going to have a conference and talk about independent living. So it'll be very interesting to see tomorrow what is all the different things that are happening.
Mm-hmm. It sounds interesting. It's a great coincidence that we're having this talk right before this day.
Yeah. So it's in Facebook. If you go into Facebook, European Network on Independent Living, you can follow it there as well, and the different things that we have in the European Youth Network. But there you have to be under 30, I think it is.
Okay. Great. Jamie, do you have anything else you want to add, or any of the students' last chance before we wind up? No?
No,
Okay,
just sorry.
I really want to...
I realized I could have talked slower since we had so much time over, but that's okay. But no, thank you very much. And again, I'm at your disposal if you want to contact me and ask anything.
Thank you so much, Jamie. I really appreciate this. Thank you.
Okay.
I think it was very useful.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.